Hey guys, it's Ava. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new, welcome if you're not new. Today we will be discussing my favorite books of the year, our Lord 2020. 2020 was a lot. We will be getting into that in my looking back on 2020 video. I've made one of those for 2016, 2017, 2018, and I never posted my 2019 one just because I just never edited it. But don't worry, it'll be a fun little surprise whenever I get to filming that, the 2021. We are here to discuss books, which is something I feel like I have not done in front of a camera in a long time. The first book I have is The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X. Arpan. So we are coming in at number 7 for this one. Major trigger warnings for this book. It mentions suicide, and I will be mentioning suicide in the spoiler-free review. So if you are one that likes to look up trigger warnings or needs it, definitely do that for this book. This was recommended to me by my friend Ryan from Ryan Reads 7, as well as my friend Christiana from me and Matilda on Instagram. This book was super sad. I am not one to really enjoy sad books that much, but I think it was beautifully written. It's basically about this girl, Lee, whose mother commits suicide. And Lee is a younger, I think sophomore high school student, and she is convinced her mother turned into a bird. This is This is magical realism, so I don't know, and I also don't read a lot of magical realism, but I thought it was really great. I'm so glad they recommended it to me. But she's convinced her mother turned into a bird, so that's where the magic kind of comes in. And she travels to Taiwan to visit her grandparents, her mother's parents. And she is half Taiwanese and half white, I believe. I'm pretty sure her dad's white. From what I remember. I read this in February. And so she goes there and she kind of uncovers family history, memories. She learns more about her culture. There's more magical realism elements. She learns about herself and about her mom. And it is so sad, but I thought it was pretty well done. I will link some, if I can find some, I'm sure there are definitely out there. I'll link some Own Voices reviews down below. This book explores themes of multiculturalism, specifically Taiwanese culture, relationships with grandparents, relationships with parents, relationships with death and memory, and it ties all of this together through art in what I thought was a very interesting way. I enjoyed reading it. I probably cried at parts. I don't quite remember because this was February, but I highly recommend it to someone. Just make sure you look up some trigger warnings first. The next book I read was Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. So I read this in March, kind of when COVID was just starting and I got sent home from high school, which was my senior year of high school. And I couldn't really sit down and read a book. I was just too jittery, antsy. So whatever I did, I went on a lot of walks and I would audiobook this book. It was slightly hard to follow in audiobook format. In case you don't know, I mean, I didn't really know who Agatha Christie was until a few years ago when I watched that Doctor Who episode about the bees.
I wanted to take what was mine, and you, Agatha Christie, with your railway station bookstore romances, what's to stop me killing you all?
Forgive me! Let you come back. Keep away, Martha. No more murder.
But she is a widely known mystery author, and this is about kind of what it says. There's a murder on the train, and our protagonist detective guy, Hercule Poirot, has to solve the mystery. And I just kind of wanted to read this because I knew it was a classic, and I hadn't read a mystery in many years. I used to read A to Z mysteries when I was little, and Nancy Drew. I used to read Nancy Drew, and that was the extent of that. So it's kind of fun to delve back into some mystery genre. It was a little bit hard to follow in audiobook format, but I wouldn't have read this book if it wasn't in audiobook. It was narrated by Dan Stevens, and the only thing I know him from is he played Beast in Beauty and the Beast 2017. I liked it though. For some reason, I really loved the character of Hercule Poirot, the detective. I really love characters who are just like exceedingly smart. So we've got, I don't read a ton of Sherlock Holmes, but like when I do, I really like Sherlock Holmes. Kaz Brekker is a big one. Gosh, he's like so smart. Annabeth Chase, I love Tony Stark. So I'm just kind of drawn to that like highly logical kind of sense in a character, and I think that moves the story forward really well. So yeah, I'm glad I read it. It came in at number 6, and I'm looking forward to reading more Agatha Christie in the future. Coming in at number 5, we have Scythe by Neil Shusterman, and I read this in May with my book club. I flew through this book. So this book is a dystopian fantasy, and it's about a world, it's our world, but it's in the future, where people don't die naturally anymore because we have such highly advanced technology and stuff like that, and medicine. So there are these people called scythes who have to go basically kill people in order to keep population down. And it's kind of this really mysterious organization, and they're supposed to do it in like a way that upholds morals and moral standing in the way that people might die naturally anyway. And 2 teenagers called Citra and Rowan are basically chosen by Scythe Faraday to apprentice and become scythes. But the catch is that neither one of them actually want to be scythes, because who wants to kill people? But then the other catch is that whoever wants to be a scythe the least, and whoever the least enjoys it, is the one that should be the scythe, because you don't want to get that power to your head of having control over humanity. And people fear scythes anyway, but if they're going to be corrupt and stuff, they'll just be like this godly power. I really enjoyed it. I kind of flew through this book. I really love a good fantasy dystopian kind of thing. I probably read this in a matter of a few days, and I would read the second book, but it's in my brother's room, and he's been reading it since April, and he hasn't finished it. He can't see me. So along with the idea of corrupt scythes, there are corrupt scythes in this world. Am I saying that right? Scythes? Scythes? I don't know. And they kind of work as the main antagonist. So our characters, Citra and Rowan, who I felt were pretty strong. I mean, they're kind of like, you know, similar to other YA characters. I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, I enjoyed it. You know, some people might not enjoy it because of that. But the book puts them through a lot of kind of twists and turns, which test them and their relationship. There's elements of heroes and villains and morally gray characters and all of that. Morality and humanity and other themes of like death and stuff. And also growing up and taking on this kind of crazy dynamic role as a scythe. I enjoyed it. So there's that. Yeah, it's pretty typical YA like fantasy, but in lockdown I just sat down and enjoyed it back in May. So coming in at number 4, we have Juliet Takes a Breath by... That was my reminder that I have babysitting at 2 o'clock. I've got 1 hour, I can finish this. Coming in at number 4, we have Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera. I read this in July. I flew through it. I thought it was really engaging and entertaining. I think I probably read it in a matter of days, and I really enjoyed it. This book is about a queer Puerto Rican teenager named Juliet who moves from, one summer, she moves from the Bronx to Oregon to intern for her favorite feminist author called Harlow Brisbane. And this is a big move for Juliet. She hasn't really traveled before, and so this is kind of like entering Oregon was really exciting for her. So while Juliet enjoys the seeming progressiveness of Oregon, she kind of realizes that everything is not what it seems, and she encounters some of Harlow Brisbane's, being a white feminist, she holds a lot of white feminist values that aren't very intersectional, and being Puerto Rican, a woman of color, Juliet has to encounter some of that, and there's other characters that help her through this, and I think they're really well done, and I just thought all the different themes were really engaging and made for a really good story. For example, themes of like race, racism, the white-centered nature of progressivism. There were parts where Juliet encounters like nationalism and the very detrimental history of US imperialism, and she questions her patriotism for this country, which is something I've been through, I know. They talked about, or the book talks about sex and romance, and I think a really sex positive way, and it's really cute, and I I loved that I could dive into some queer romance again, because due to personal reasons for a long time I kind of held off on reading queer romance despite being bisexual myself. There was just kind of a lot going on there, but now that I'm older I'm getting more back into it. I liked this representation in this very multi-layered book. It's just such a great story. I highly recommend it. It's pretty short, so you could probably read it in a few days. Well, is this short? I don't know. But I think, did I annotate this? Yeah, I've got some, like, I just got some, like, really good quotes and stuff, so. Coming in at number 3, we have the entire Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins. I haven't read A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes yet. I don't know if I will. Maybe I'll get to it. Now that I'm looking back at this series, it kind of has the same energy as Scythe, where you've got, like, your friends to lovers upholding each other in a life or death situation, in general, teenagers thrust into life or death situations. This was a reread for me. I think this is the 3rd time I've read this series, 3rd or 4th. I don't know why, but during my last week of classes, I just picked it up because I was procrastinating 2 long essays that I had to write. And I just started reading. I've always loved these books. I've always been like infatuated with Katniss Everdeen and the way she's so badass, and I was Katniss one year for Halloween. I'll put a picture up here. I think I was 12. Hey y'all, here are the photos. They're not from Halloween, but they're from the Mockingjay Part 1 premiere circa 2014. Clearly I thought I did something here. I was very proud of these costumes. I was 13 years old, so do with that information what you will. The first book didn't hold up as much in my memory. It definitely needs to follow, or at the time it needed to follow the like general like 1 exclamation mark per page kind of thing. It was, I don't know, the writing was a little iffy, but the story still held up, and the second 2 books still pretty much held up. I absolutely love this story, and if you don't know what it's about, this series kind of took the internet and kind of the world by storm. A few years ago, I want to say like 2014 to 2017 or 18, I can't remember when the last movie came out, but basically it is about this dystopian future America where they're kind of ruled, I guess it is fascism, where the government has all the power, and there are 12 districts in America now called Panem. Each year, 1 boy and 1 girl from each district, ages 12 to 18, anywhere in there, are picked to fight to the death in a Roman Colosseum-esque, but also modern-esque Hunger Games, this barbaric event where children kill each other. And that sounds horrifying. Katniss's sister Primrose gets picked to be in the Hunger Games, but instead Katniss volunteers for her. And something that didn't quite hit me when I read this, because I think the last time I read this I was like 14 and now I'm 18, is that Katniss is 16. That is so young, but that's like the craziness of young adult literature. It shows the strength of young people that they shouldn't have to have. I absolutely, obviously I already said I really like Katniss, and especially rereading Mockingjay, the last book, I just realized how this is not romantic at all. She goes through some shit, and I think they just show her journey really well, and the way that she is used during the Hunger Games and after the Hunger Games by all these people in power, and she's just molded to fit whatever device they need her to be, and it's just, I'm getting chills. I love this series so much. I also love Primrose, Katniss's sister. I wish we saw more of her in the series. I just think she's a really cool character and such an antithesis to Katniss. Whereas Katniss has had to fight and feed her family for years and years and years, Primrose is the opposite. She heals people instead of like killing animals and hunting, and she's just like, I don't know, I just love her. I wish we saw more of her and the way she just grows up through the series. This also kind of reminded me of my love for Peeta as well, the love interest, one of the love interests. He is also just this gentle, kind being thrust into the Hunger Games, and he is also used as a pawn in a very similar way Katniss is. And these books are so good. These books, I think this one's the best. I didn't quite realize it at first, but now I know why everyone's obsessed with it. I know that I've reread it. They just show the nuances of, and they critique and stuff and comment on the nature of mass media, the normalization of violence on screen, and the way the rich, often white people, hold all the cards and trample on the poor people in the districts and control them. And Oh, it's just such a good read. And it talks about power and love and manipulation. Oh, so good. So if you haven't read The Hunger Games, I highly recommend it. Mockingjay gets me every single time. Every time I read this book, there are definitely parts in the middle that like don't make sense. I think she could have fleshed this out more. Catching Fire was done really well. But every time I read this book, I need like a full 24 hours to just like recuperate. Oh, so good. So poignant, so amazing. Maybe I'll read A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I don't really care about President Snow, I'm gonna be honest. If I should read it, I don't know, comment down below because I don't know if I'll read it. The next book we have is Felix Ever After by Kaysen Callender. This was recommended, I'm not on book Twitter anymore, but I was for a few months, and this is all over book Twitter. I think it was all over Bookstagram and BookTube. And look at this cover. I can't see it now because I have to put it in when I'm editing it, but I can see it in my mind, and it's, oh, I love it. I love it a lot. I read this book in a day with my book club, and I really want to reread it and kind of take more time with it. So Felix Love is a transgender teen who has never been in love. The irony, I know. And I'm just going to read a quote kind of from the summary because I think it summarizes it really well. Felix secretly fears that he is one marginalization too many because he is Black, queer, and transgender to find his happily ever after. So this book takes us through a summer in Felix's life where he is doing an art program, like a summer art portfolio making program. I don't know. Which was a setting I thought was really good. It was in New York. It was very dynamic. I loved the art school setting and the art school kids. I am not an art student. My very close friend Eve is though, so it was kind of fun to see in her setting, even if it was fictional. Also look up some trigger warnings for this book too. I'll be mentioning the concept of dead naming. The main conflict happens when Felix is basically dead named in a really public way, and he is super affected by that. This basically devastates him and he has no idea who did it, so he decides to kind of take on this case, like who did this horrible act, through social media and stuff like that. So this kind of adventure that starts through Instagram takes him on a whirlwind of little adventures that lead him down different paths of relationships, romantic, platonic, familial. It takes a look down Felix's identity, how he sees that in himself and through his art, and how other people see him. It touches a bit on the meaning of intersectional feminism, and it's altogether just a really good story. There's heartbreaking parts, there's parts where I laughed out loud. I just thought it was really well done. And I will link all these books by people of color. I will link some Own Voices reviews down below so you can see what they have to say about it. Coming in at number 1, we have Sudden Death by Alvaro Enrique. This book, I wish I could tell you what it was about. This is by far the weirdest book I have ever read, and also the most difficult book I've ever read. Like, I have a whole shelf of kind of difficult books right here that I had to read for school, and this one takes the cake. It was hard to read, but it was very well done, and I enjoyed it. I started reading it in April, and I finished it last week. It's December 8th. Basically, this takes place in, I think, 14th century Europe, and I'm just going to read the back because it does a good job at summarizing it. A tennis match, 16th century Rome, sorry. A tennis match in 16th century Rome. Caravaggio, aka Michelangelo, plays the Spanish poet Quevedo. Galileo is the line judge. The ball is made from the coveted hair of recently beheaded Anne Boleyn. There's fighting, drinking, sexual liaisons, popes behaving badly, executions, Thomas Cromwell and Henry VIII, I think, Roman numerals, plotting. There's murder and cheating, and across the ocean, conquistador Hernan Cortez and his Mayan translator and lover, La Malinche, play their own games, a domestic comedy that will change the course of the world. There's more fighting, hallucinogenic mushrooms, more sex, utopian colonies, assassinations, and coronations. This is a story of revolutions, artistic, religious, political, personal, sexual. This story is a fiction and an archive and an oracle. History is a game, history is overturned. Game, set, match. So it is very chaotic. But basically, the ball is made from Anne Boleyn's hair. Okay, so we've got politics, and we have Italy and England and Spain, and also the Spanish colonies. That's all tied together by this really chaotic game of tennis, which I just think was really interesting, and now I know a little bit too much about tennis. and I don't play tennis. It ties into a story of Hernan Cortez, a storyline that critiques and kind of satirically writes about this, about colonization, which is a horrible, horrible event, but it does it in a satirical way that critiques Spanish colonization because it was so horrible, and their encounters with indigenous people, specifically the Aztecs. I'll be honest, sometimes this book was really hard to follow and I had no idea what's going on. And sometimes I was reading pages over and over again, like I'd read a page 2 or 3 times to really understand it. But it wasn't my favorite book because it was easy. It was my favorite book because it was a huge challenge. And I literally had pages where I was like kind of drawing diagrams to understand what was going on. I annotated a lot of it. And the parts I did understand were either heartbreaking or hilarious or just like such good commentary or like funny dialogue. And it wasn't one continuous storyline as far as I could tell. I want to reread it and see what else I can get out of it. Not anytime soon because I'm very tired from reading this book. I found myself laughing out loud at parts. Some parts were like absolutely heartbreaking, so stuff like that. I recommend this book for people 18 and up just because of the content, and also, well, the content's not horrible, but like it's such a hard read. Like I could not have read this. Like I barely read this and I'm 18. Who want a challenge and are interested in European history and colonialism, because I love history, so this is another reason why I love this book. I can kind of connect some of these dots. At the same time, I realized how much gaps I also have in history in the 16th century. So now my history minor is typing. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. That is all I have for you today. If you want to check out the links down below of authors of color, own voices reviews, all of that fun stuff, that'll be for you down there. What was your favorite book of 2020? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.